So this is the social media session. I remember Galina, was that right? I think you were here last year. Was anyone else at this session last year, the social media session? Okay, okay, awesome. So I actually wanted to ask people who were here last year, has there been any change from last year? I mean, you said you're only here for 10 minutes. With regard to sort of what your group is doing with social media, has, you know, have...
We realize that it's kind of tough, and the biggest question is how to promote it.
Okay.
And you told us about advertising last year,
Mm-hmm.
and the issue is how do we get the budget, given that for our club, the association collects money and we don't really see anything. How do we get the budget for advertising? And what are the other kinds of other means that you could use to promote it?
Sure. Okay, so, and I'm going to touch on a couple of other ways to promote without money on this one. So I'll make sure to get to that specifically. So I wanted to frame this conversation a little bit to start with. There was a quote that I saw in, I think it was Harvard Business Review about social media. The name of the article was, "Are you building Facebook's empire or your own?" And this is not a direct quote exactly. I sort of, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I came in a little late. You might have said, what is your name, please?
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself actually. Tracy Swanson. I'm a web marketing specialist in the Alumni Office of Communications. And then behind me is Samantha Morales. Do you want to introduce yourself? All right, she's in alumni relations and she is responsible for volunteer communications. So she helped get all of you here. So again, this is not a complete direct quote. I just sort of cut and pasted a little bit. Okay, so the promise of the social web is not that it will help find more people who are like us to connect with, that we can, sorry. And there's also, this is around, if you want to look at it, we're going to have it up here, but if you want to have it in front of you. So the promise of social web is not that it will help us find more people who are like us to connect with. It's not that we can collaborate, gather feedback, grow, and improve. It is not people being able to make a living unleashing their creativity on Etsy or YouTube. So the promise of the social web encompasses these things, but it is not limited to connecting, collaborating, or creating. It's actually about something bigger. It's about something more fundamental. So the promise of the social web is actually incredibly simple. It's supposed to make people's lives better. It's supposed to make people's lives simpler, less confusing, less alienating, more efficient, more meaningful, and just plain better. But sometimes it does the opposite. It's an escape from reality, and like other forms of escape, it only temporarily relieves us from our daily pressures. So that's just something to sort of mull over, think about. Really, how can you make people's lives better with social media? Not a lot of the things that we think social media is for. I sent out a survey. Can I grab that sheet, actually? So I sent out a survey. Hopefully, most or all of you got it. And I got some responses. It's pretty simple, basically. Who are you? What group are you here volunteering with? And sort of what do you want to get out of the session? And I think I'll just sort of go down my list. Is Elizabeth Johnson here by any chance? Do you mind if I go through your responses? Okay. So you're with the Military Affinity Group.
Yeah.
And the Military Affinity Group has a Facebook page.
We have Facebook and we have LinkedIn. But, you know, to say that we have them is I started them and I don't really know much about what I'm doing, and we were just chit-chatting informally. It's been a real struggle to get people interested, to try to figure out, you know, I would love it if people would post more stuff. I did ask them to steer away from political arguments, which military folks love to get into. But it hasn't been as robust as I had hoped when I started it. Given especially the age demographics of our group, I would have thought it would be more popular. And certainly during Alumni Weekend, it was a great way to centralize our planning of our events that we had around Alumni Weekend. So it was very useful then, but I would say since then it's been less useful than what I had envisioned when I started it.
I'm just going to take a couple of notes to make sure I don't miss anything. I may also just sort of for the sake of posterity, I might repeat some of the answers that people give just so we can get, with the video, we can get like complete understanding of what we're talking about. Could you actually move to, oh, you already did. Okay, so I basically organized this, this sort of guide to start thinking about how to best utilize social media or how to best think about utilizing social media. So the first question is basically, why were you considering using social media in the first place? And I categorized, I sort of came up with what I thought were good categories of answers for these different questions. So the 4 categories for why are you considering social media that I came up with are, first, appeasement. Essentially, you're doing it because someone said you should do it. Disruption, you're doing it because you don't really like what the group is doing now, and you think that social media can have this transformative effect, so you just want to see what happens. Expansion, essentially, you want to reach more people. Conversation, there's something inherent about the way that social media allows people to communicate that you want to bring in. So when you're thinking about using social media, specifically with your group, do any of these sort of stick out to you?
Yeah, I think I was thinking expansion at first because we were a brand new group, and I was looking to maybe sort of publicize and get to as many people as we could. Not expanding of our group generally, but just expanding the forum of people communicating, and then obviously conversation, that people would post articles of interest about the military, that maybe we would get a discussion going for people, you know, that have particular interests, for military families and veterans and things like that.
Okay. So I want to get into a few more of the details. So with expansion, social media is, it's good for sort of expansion reasons because the barriers to entry are low. It's really easy to set up a Facebook page. Unfortunately, the low barriers to entry mean that there's actually a lot of competition in that space because everybody can get on, and there's a lot of competition for people's attention. And it doesn't just come. It doesn't just come because you set up a page. The only time that really happens is if you're already famous and people are already talking about you on social media. But the military affinity group, being a new group, is not really famous. Not yet, right? Right. I would say that the only real UChicago entity that is maybe famous is probably the university itself. Like, for example, the university's Facebook page, they put a lot of effort into expanding that page and that network. But it got a lot of natural growth just because people were attending the university, applying to the university, so there was a little bit of that famous ON. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm with the Chicago Alumni Club, and we wanted to expand into Facebook just to try and reach out to a younger demographic. So we felt like we might be missing in our communications. So we thought expanding to various social media would be an opportunity.
Yeah. And then there's a question behind you.
I was going to comment on your appeasement. We probably stopped what we were doing because of a statement about avoiding embarrassment to our group. I actually was the communications director for the Chicago Women's Alliance, and we have our email list and all that. We actually set up both Facebook and LinkedIn. I established IDs under my UC enrollment address. Then we realized this was not going to go very far because there was so much upkeep we would have to do on both of those sites. And we were waiting for that affinity group website to come up. So ours actually has been kind of a hiatus, waiting for that affinity group we were just talking about, the website that we were just talking about to come up. I can see a use, more of a use in the future, but for now it was just overload for us to try to manage emails, and we were working on the development of the website and Facebook and LinkedIn, and try to make all of them interconnected and accurate. And it was just too much for, I was a single person working on communications, so it was just too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that if you can't invest enough in any one thing to sort of give it a robust presence, you know, you might actually be doing a little bit of disservice because it might make your organization look sort of not as put together as it actually is. Yeah, go ahead. It's subjective, but there are sort of best practices out there. I think a good a good maybe way of measuring this is look at find an organization that you personally think is doing a good job. So look around Facebook. Maybe there are organizations that you're familiar with, clubs that you're familiar with. Look at their pages and say, is this actually offering me anything or not? And for the ones that that are actually you think are offering you value, is this something we could do?
Do you have examples among the University of Chicago clubs, like those that you feel are doing the robust work? Not the main page, but the club.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Chicago club is doing a good job. They've got a lot of engagement for the size. Yeah.
It's a big club.
It is a big club, right. I mean, it's a big club, but it's got, what, 300 members or 300 followers on the Facebook page, I think. So, I mean, if it's a really, really small club, if the club itself,
It's like smaller than the Chicago club, but like 1,000 members.
when the,
On email list.
yeah, I mean, I think it depends. If you can actually offer value, then that's probably worthwhile. If what you're doing is not offering value to the people, then you have to question whether or not it's worth your investment. Yeah. And let me get to a couple. Go ahead.
Yeah, so something that worked well. I mean, you kind of, when you have this social media page and there's not much engagement or everything, it's sort of like stagnant. Not many people are using it. You have it, but no one's using it. So the question is, how do you get people to use it? So I'm involved with the Chicago Men's Acapella Affinity Group, and so one of the ways that we are able to keep things active and engaged is we actually engage people who are still students who are singing in the group. So we actually, alumni don't manage or aren't as hands-on with the social media. It's really driven a lot by the people who are still on campus. So I wonder if that probably won't work in some situations, like if you're a club, I understand we have this particular niche, but I wonder if you do have connections with folks who are already using social media actively as students, that you can coordinate with them to get some more activity there. Yeah.
So there was one more. Did you have another question?
Yeah,
Here?
I do.
I want to get to your question, then I'm going to move on a little bit more, and then we'll get back to the other people.
So, real quick, I'm a big Facebook user as far as networking and things of that nature. That's the purpose of my networking, is to use Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
How do I find University of Chicago Club as a thing to like, and then therefore you like it, then I will get like emails about it, not emails, but posts about it. If that exists, or what's the search for the University of Chicago clubs, the New York clubs, and things of that nature?
So you're asking how do you find a club that you're interested in?
Yes.
Okay, so up in the search bar at the very top, this is sort of a technical, just straightforward answer. Yeah, so up in the search bar at the top, it can be a little bit tricky because it depends on how they phrase the name of the page.
Right.
And so you might have to try a couple of different examples. I mean, if you get sort of basic keywords in there, and then search, and then it'll give you a list of options. You might need to go all the way to the bottom, it'll say like, see all the options, and you might need to go through a couple of like lists of things. In terms of, from a club's perspective, you really want to be actively telling people where to get and giving them direct links to the page, because that's the best guarantee that they'll actually find the specific page. But you're right, it is kind of complicated because Facebook is sort of literal in terms of what it's giving you. It's not like, it doesn't operate on keyword as well as like a search engine does.
I have one more question. You go to the University of Chicago Alumni Page, and then you will see like a list of pages that they liked, and they like all the alumni clubs. That's how I kind of can see.
Do you want to go to the directory tab?
So here's the Chicago.
Yeah. So on the UChicago Alumni Facebook page.
That's what I want to be on. I want to be on that.
So in the apps here, which is these small icons right there, there's a thing that says Facebook directory. This has a list of all the clubs that I am personally aware of that have told me they have a Facebook page. If you have a club that has a Facebook page and it's not on this list, tell me and I'll add it to this list. And it's not, it's not like the best solution. It's not a very robust solution because you still have to know to go to this directory, but it's at least something.
I don't see the men's a cappella group.
Yeah, and I have a stack of my business cards right over here on this table, so, and you can feel free to send me any information or any follow-up questions to this session.
Thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to sort of the next set of, or the next question on this sheet, and that's what specifically do you want people to do with social media? And the four categories I came up with here are opt-in. Basically, you want them to give you permission to contact them. Convince others. Do you want them to use their own networks to spread the word? Take action. Is it there's something actually concrete in the real world you want them to do, and you're trying to use social media to lead them in that direction? Or give ideas, and this is more the sort of communication where you want to use the communication that happens on social media as a feedback to help your group out. And I'm actually going to stay with sort of the same example. So Elizabeth, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I was trying to find some of this stuff on my phone, but it's impossible. I'll do it later. Yes.
So of these four sort of general, and there might be something else, but of these four sort of general categories, are there any that really stick out as being particularly relevant?
Yeah, I mean, opt-in, obviously, when we were first starting the group was super important because we were trying to gather everybody together. And also, to me, when we first started the group, we were doing it over the phone. And so what I liked about Facebook was you at least kind of saw a picture of the person, and so you had a better sense of who you were talking to over the phone. And then obviously take action and give ideas. We were looking for people to come up with events. Maybe we had talked at our reunion weekend or alumni weekend about, you know, how can we stay connected throughout the year. And I made a push and plug for our social media sites, which nobody really took up the charge. And then give ideas, because there's always something interesting in the newspaper about the military that if people share and comment on, I thought would be a really interesting forum. And that really also hasn't become as robust as I was hoping.
Okay. So you touched on almost all four of these in some way. So I'll sort of go through and respond to a couple of those. So in terms of sort of giving ideas, I think it's important that there's an incentive in the sense that people think that if they provide ideas in this manner, it'll actually have an impact. So if it's just we want you to chat, people may or may not do that because they already know how to chat. Like they don't need a place to talk to their friends. Generally, I mean well, they do, but it may not be on your page. They're not going to necessarily go to your page as opposed to anywhere else. But if it's something where you can really show that the discussion that's happening there is having an impact on what the group does, then I think there's going to be a lot more incentive for people to do that. In terms of taking actions, social media. So just a little bit of background for me. I'm involved with all of the web marketing for UChicago alumni, so website, email, social media. And social media is not always the best way to get people to actually do a specific action in the real world. For example, getting people to donate, getting people to sign up for events, getting people to attend events. That can get some people to do those things, but for us in particular, email is a much better tool to do that. Now, that's going to be different for different groups because some segments of the population are prefer to get contacted on social media. There are actually some things that I much prefer to talk with people about on social media than email, because I have 100 emails to respond to every day, and so sometimes that conversation is better for me. But that's not the same for everybody. So I think for taking specific actions, you want to see like, if we put in this much effort in social media, how many people are actually taking an action as a result of that, as opposed to making a post on our website, sending out emails to people, and you want to see social media as part of a bigger sort of communication plan, and you want to put effort where it's actually getting results. I mean, I'm not going to say that you should all go out and put registration forms on your Facebook pages because people might not fill them out. And it really should be, put your resources where they're going to have the impact that you want. So opt-ins, if you have a lot of content that you really want to make sure people are getting, opt-ins are something that are very important, but they're not necessarily everything. If it's something if it's fine for people to just come back periodically and look at your page, you don't necessarily have to make a big push for opt-ins. but in that case, in that case, it's sort of like any other website. If people want to go, they can look at it. An opt-in may or may not be necessary. I want to get to a couple more of the responses that people gave. Is Sonia Gonzalez here? Okay. How about Nicole? Yep. Thanks. What's your last name? Ristic. So you're on the SSA Alumni Board, and so the SSA Alumni Board it doesn't have its own Facebook page, does it?
Yes.
It does.
It was on your list.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was.
I guess it's the school's alumni page.
The school's alumni page.
We don't, yes, the board itself.
Okay. And do you have direct control over that page?
No.
Okay. Okay. And it says here LinkedIn is also used, but is that?
To the extent that I or another member of the board goes to SSA's LinkedIn page or the university's LinkedIn page, like I did 2 days ago, and posts about our alumni weekend that's next week.
Okay.
So I look at that, but that's the extent of which the volunteers are using it, and the school is sort of using it in a hit or miss way.
Okay.
So.
Now, you also mentioned here that you want to sort of get the word out. Is that in the sense of, because actually something that the SSA does fairly well, something that the SSA does fairly well on its own Facebook page, which it actually updates pretty frequently, is sort of building its reputation for what it, for its work. Is that what you mean, or do you mean like?
No, that's not what I meant. I meant more from the board perspective of if we're planning events or we have volunteer opportunities, or like our alumni weekend is this upcoming weekend. We switched the dates, and so we are trying to spread the word to people. And the school has done, the traditional sort of marketing and paper and email and all that. But we're just, for that example, trying to get the word out to as many alumni as we can in hopes of they will see this great, exciting 3-day weekend that we have planned and hope to come take part in any piece of it.
Okay, so it's mostly spreading the word about events to alumni from the SSA.
Yes,
Okay.
particularly for the board purposes, but yes.
Okay. And do you mean spreading the word to people who sort of you already have connections with, or do you mean actually going out and finding new people to come?
Sort of a little bit of both. SSA has one of the lower percentages of accurate contact information for its alumni.
Okay, so you're dealing with sort of the inability to contact people?
Yeah, so like we're currently trying to, again, sort of through the board's perspective, to capture alumni in the different areas where they may be participating. If they haven't themselves connected with the school and updated their contact information, that like us, we're both on the board, that we're trying to encourage the board to use their contacts on social media to spread the word and so forth to trickle out, so that the people that the school as the official body might not have knowledge of, they might still get the information some other way.
Okay. So I think you're actually, from the way I see this, is you're actually dealing with sort of two challenges right now. One is expanding sort of the reach, as we would call it, of getting the ability to contact people, and then the second is getting people to take some particular action. And those are things that you can do them both at the same time, but you want to think about them as separate strategic goals. So, and actually, I want to go. This is probably a good segue to go to the. Sure.
I'm thinking
One more
about
challenge.
getting some kind of user-generated content. For example, for the Women's Alliance, we would like to get stories of women's success. And how do we do it? How do we engage people? How do we provide framework for them to do it? Besides just for emailing, any other better way to do it?
So you're saying you want people to use social media to give you stories?
I don't know, social media, or how should we do it on the magnet somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would like to have news on the magnet site about successful stories. How do we do it? How? Can social media help engage people? How? Any user-generated content that we might use, for example, on the website for use?
I'd say yes, it is possible to solicit sort of user-generated content through social media, but again, people have to have the sense that it's going to serve some purpose. Otherwise, why should they use their time to do that? And I think, I think that's actually
some kind of something they get out of it. The big purpose is getting out the news about success stories.
But why are you getting out the news about success stories?
It's just to encourage other women to do better.
Okay, to encourage other women through the stories. I think that's maybe something where you want to make the case a little bit stronger. But I think it doesn't necessarily matter how you ask people for that, because for a career month, obviously not the next month one, but the previous year, we got user-generated content. It's actually a little convoluted now that I think about it. We approached people on Twitter that we thought had interesting career paths, and asked them, would you be interested in submitting some content for this career month series we're going to run on Facebook? And I think we got 5 people. But so I asked them first on Twitter, you know, would you be interested in this? They said yes. Right, but I had to find them. I had to actively go and find them and figure out who they were. They didn't just come to me. And then, so once they basically agreed to some degree, I went out, I emailed them and said, this is what we need. Can you email me back with your content in this format and this length? Because the format of email is just better for what I was asking for. So you can use lots of different means to get user content, but I mean, social media is like anything else. You have to actually ask people. If you throw out something really general and people don't see a lot of value to it, then they're just not going to do it. It's way easier for people to not do something on social media than in an email, because email is so direct and it's from you to that person. Or social media, if you just throw it out there, it's very easy to ignore.
What if you bribe them somehow, like discount?
Yeah, if you can bribe them, I mean, that's a kind of value. I don't know that it's going to build the long-term engagement, but it works to some degree. So, yeah, go ahead.
I think the way to bribe people is people look forward to seeing pictures of themselves and their friends, and that's one thing that social media does very well. And if you're trying to build a group and you're trying to get people to plug into the site and look and find out when the group next meets and what they're going to do, you put pictures of themselves and their friends, and they want to go look at the pictures.
Yeah.
And then they look at the site, and then they see your next posting of what's going to happen. You can bribe people very easily.
Yeah, that's very true. Pictures of somebody, pictures of people is a good way to get those people to come and look. But I do want to go back to the SSA. So we're getting to sort of this last page where we're talking about resources. So the first, these to me are sort of the 4 basic resources of social media, or really almost any communications. So time, this is both sort of in days on the calendar and in hours that you have to devote to things. Especially starting out, social media growth can be very, very, very slow. But there will come a point where sort of the connections that you've brought together are big enough that they are somewhat self-sustaining, and you'll see some momentum build up. But it can take a long time. And I've seen, there was a recent study of nonprofit Facebook pages, and I believe the number was 1,000 likes is the point at which they start to get some of their own momentum. But I mean, I've been working with the UChicago Alumni Twitter account since January of 2010, and we're up from, I think it was 400 followers to 17 or 1800, and that was just totally gradual. I mean, once we started doing some activity, there was a turn up in the number of the follower rate, and it's been consistent since then. So really it was just we waited and waited and waited and just kept after it, and there was no secret. It was just we devoted time to seeing it have success. The other thing is, as I forget who mentioned it over here, but there has to be you have to devote some time in terms of hours in the day to, if you have a strategy, you have to really make it robust enough to have some impact. And you'll see at the bottom of here I say people and money are shortcuts for time. So people, because social media is all about the personal connections that people have with each other and sort of bringing people's networks together. If you can get people to spread the word about what you're doing, it's going to go a lot faster. And so, because recommendations are sort of how the power that social media has, is that when I have, I have a personal connection with Toby, and there's trust in that personal connection that Toby and I have that I wouldn't have with a stranger. And so when I say, I really like, the SSA Facebook page and look at all the stuff that they have going on, Toby trusts my judgment more than he would a stranger's judgment. And so that's a lot stronger than you going out and saying, hey, all SSA alumni, we have something great going on. Please trust us and come and look. And you kind of need to, it's a little counterintuitive, but you kind of need to use non-social media avenues to build social media growth. Especially, actually, I tell people, email is a really good way. If you have a good email list, you can tell everybody, hey, we have a Facebook page, this is what we're gonna offer, join it. And you'll get a bump right there. And just personal, I mean, face-to-face is a great way to do it too. It's a great way to get people to know what the name of your page is so they can find it. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so people really sort of make everything run, and they make it run a lot smoother. Money, as social media sort of grows up and gets used by corporations a lot more, money is becoming a bigger factor. You can pay to expand your reach, but only for a time, because there still has to be something for people to want to come back to. And so basically it's like you can get a bump with money, but it's only going to last as long as you keep spending the money. And so you have to actually, I mean, if you're having a hard time getting going, it can help you, but I mean, and again, I don't expect a lot of you have any like social media advertising budgets to speak of. I mean, and we don't really either. We ran a Phoenix Fest ad, and that cost, for the whole country, I think it cost like $140. So we don't, it's not like we're spending massive amounts of money on social media advertising, but it is an avenue if you can do it. But again, you have to have something that's going to keep people there once you get their attention. Content. So content is sort of what makes everything run. Content is sort of like the discrete element of social media. A piece of content, video, clip, image, text, whatever. And this is another sort of powerful thing about social media, is that social media allows content to move very, very freely. And I say here far from the original context, which is something to keep in mind when you're developing content, that whatever context you have to this piece of content is going to get lost the more it gets shared. So you want to build things into the content that can lead it back to you. So maybe you have an article that gets shared. You want to have a link back to the original thing that you want people to know about this article. So, I mean, maybe the SSA had some new piece of research that you want to tell people about. You can do a Facebook post and say, there's this interesting thing the SSA is doing. Put a link to the actual article so you can get people back to the original thing and back to sort of the context that you want them to see the content. Another thing about content is that a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I think some people believe that if you just have really, really great content, people are going to find it, and you don't have to do any more work. For social media, that's not really true. I mean, over time that can happen over a long, long period of time, but you still have to sort of promote it to some degree to get some momentum going. Yeah, I mean, I like to think of it as sort of like a social media outpost. Like you have this outpost and you're producing content here, but it's out there and it's all isolated unless you bring in the human element and bring in those connections. And I don't know that I actually answered, I don't know that I totally answered the situation with SSA, but.
No, I mean, I think you did to a certain degree. I think it's difficult for us as an alumni board because we are not the ones owning and operating it.
We're not administrators.
And I think the people at the school who are sort of responsible for that have a billion other duties. So I don't think it's a priority yet at that level that the alumni board thinks it should be.
Sure.
But I think, no, I mean, I think the idea of like content and how we use it is what we can push for. Like, this is the kind of thing we'd like to be seeing on it. So.
Yeah.
And is that their policy that you can't be an administrator?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, we haven't explored whether or not the alumni board as an institution could create its own outside of SSA.
But for sure you can't be on there.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, that was the advantage for me of starting the Facebook page, is that I'm the administrator, so I can do whatever I want on it, which is useful.
We have administrators for various subcommittees, though, of the board. So we've got African American committee. There's administrators in charge of that, but as far as SSA, we're not administrators.
Yeah, so not just not having full sort of administrative access is a big issue, it seems like here. I mean, that's something where if you can be very clear about what you're trying to accomplish and you have like a clear strategy, it's going to reduce the time commitments of the administrators because you're going to have much more specific requests about what you want from them, and it's not going to seem like such a huge time commitment for them. I think also you don't necessarily have to have your own social media presence to use social media to your advantage. I mean, if you think about like all the sharing buttons you see all over the place, those are still people using the tools of social media without having an actual social media profile or page. Because I mean, this is something where people, again, it comes back to people, where you have all these people on your board, and they can all post things on their own. They can all share each other's things. It may take a slightly more coordinated effort on your part, because if you can't all point back to the same thing and say share this in the one specific place, then you're going to have to do sort of more offline work. But just because you don't have administrative access doesn't mean you can't still use social media for impact and using the connections that people have.
Is there any hope to get help from the Alumni Association in terms of like a heavy page if we create a good content that can be interesting to broader community? Can we hope for having it promoted on the association's page, Facebook page?
On the alumni page? Yeah. Yeah, just contact me. Yeah, I'm an administrator, Samantha's an administrator, and just let me know what you want to do. Yeah.
That's good information.
Yeah.
Tracy, I wonder though, I mean, I guess the more I'm hearing today about the new sort of, I guess, web pages that are being started, that are, it sounds like in some instances almost more useful for a group like mine than maybe the social media has become, because we don't have that critical mass and because we do have more static information than dynamic postings. Do you have a thought about whether it even makes sense to keep the Facebook and to keep, I mean, the LinkedIn is fine because I don't really, people use that for what it's worth, but Facebook is something that it just doesn't seem to take off unless people actually use it. Does it make sense to keep both now that we actually are migrating and having this web page that's going to come up? What's your take on that? Is it always better to have more, or is it better to just focus everything now on this new web page that's going to be active soon, I'm understanding?
Yeah, so the question was with the new club pages on the UChicago Community Online, that's what it's called, right? Thanks. Is it worth sort of maintaining? And I've talked about a lot about Facebook here, but I'm sort of just using that as an example of social media in general. I mean, there are elements of those websites that are very social. I mean, there's the discussion boards, and social media has sort of like a vague definition anyway. But what I would say is you want to look at what people are using already, and see where you're going to have impact. And not, again, not overextend yourself if it's not going to have a benefit. I mean, I'm not going to promote, I am not going to promote any particular social media platform over any other, because it just doesn't make sense to me to do that. I mean, the only time I would do that is if some platforms have very specific technical features that you can use. So that's maybe a reason, but generally speaking, go where people are and go what they're comfortable with using and go where you actually have an impact. I mean, like, for example, with Alumni Weekend, we use Twitter because Twitter gives us a nice feed, and the way that that feed works is nice for us. I don't know if any of you were at Alumni Weekend and you saw sort of like the Twitter boards that we had around on the flat screens, but that was just technically very useful for us. It wasn't that we were trying to reach out on Twitter in that way. It's just we were using a feature of it. So in that case, Twitter was great, but I wouldn't say that everyone should use Twitter because it's the best social network. We have about 10. I didn't quite get into anything, but there was one that I wanted to. Is Oscar Anderson here? Okay. Well, I thought this was an interesting question because he said, the question was, what do you want to get out of the session? And he asked, how to eliminate narcissism from all forms of social media, which I thought was really ambitious. But I think there's something sort of interesting about the question, which is, you know, so you don't want to try to solve all of your problems with social media, and you don't want to try to make social media something that it's not. It's really just think about what you can accomplish with it, make some priorities and come up with a plan, and then execute the plan. And not sort of load all of your hopes and dreams on social media because it's just a way of communicating, and you want to have a balance with any other ways you're already communicating. And in terms of narcissism, like, yeah, people are, in any human endeavor, there's going to be narcissism, I assume. And like you said with bribing people with the pictures, why do you think people go to those pictures? Because they're narcissistic and they want to look at pictures of themselves. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, if it gets people to your page and people want to look at the pictures, then give them the pictures. So, you know, use the platforms for what they're worth, use social media for what it's worth, but think about what you really want to get out of it, and I mean, that's it probably. We have like a couple more minutes, but so for any other questions, but if not, you can all finish up the day and go to the reception.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.